So he's in New Orleans. Um, Srila Prabhupada and his party arrived at the large mansion on Esplanade Boulevard in heavy rain. Nityananda, the New Orleans temple president, having been given 2 weeks notice of Prabhupada's visit, had hurriedly repainted and readied all the buildings, both here and at the Mississippi farm. Despite a thorough search of the city's market, however, he had been unable to find any bitter melon, which he had heard Srila Prabhupada took daily for digestion. Therefore, he had arranged for one of Prabhupada's secretaries to bring some from Dallas. Nityananda and the New Orleans devotees felt they were as ready for Prabhupada's visit as they would ever be. A wide marble staircase led up to the entrance, and Prabhupada, leaning on his cane, climbed it slowly, as devotees threw flower petals down from the third floor. The entire distance from the car to the house, about 250 feet, was covered with a 3 foot wide white cloth, leading up to the Vyasasana. Prabhupada bowed down before the deities of Gaurnitai, Radha Radhakant, and Lord Jagannath, sat down, but then decided it was too late in the morning to speak. Instead, he went at once to his quarters in the building next door. As soon as Srila Prabhupada reached his home, he was introduced to an official from City Hall who had come from the mayor's office to present him with an honorary welcome to New Orleans. Prabhupada graciously accepted a symbolic key to the city and scroll welcoming and appraising him as an honorable visitor. Seizing the opportunity, he began preaching to the man, treating his guest not as a city official but as any other conditioned soul. When the welcoming flurry had abated and Srila Prabhupada had bathed, taken prasadam, and rested, he called for Nityananda. When Nityananda entered, Prabhupada had sandalwood pulp on his forehead and wore a fresh garland. Nityananda offered obeisances. Alone in the room with his spiritual master, he felt embarrassed and fearful. Prabhupada picked up a photo album from his desk containing pictures of the farm in Mississippi. You know, he said, I have come especially to see your farm. That's interesting. So now Prabhupada is arrived at New Orleans. I don't know where it is. Is New Orleans a state?
In Louisiana.
Louisiana, okay.
City in Louisiana. Yep.
Okay. So when he came, the devotees had got everything ready. And Nityananda Prabhu seems the leader and temple president there. He made nice arrangements for Prabhupada to come. They're very comfortable. Prabhupada takes bitter melon, so he made sure that they gets from Dallas to serve Srila Prabhupada. When he came to the mansion on Esplanade Boulevard, so what did they do is they made a grand welcome with 250 feet long white cloth on the floor and putting flower petals, marble steps, and leading up to Vyasasana. Prabhupada took darshan. And the city officials also had arrived, the mayor's office, to present him an honorary welcome. That's so wonderful. Prabhupada really had influenced by every city on. He looks like whole America knew now that time. Hardly at this time, hardly any American, only some Americans know now. Prabhupada, just one person who could make this fame, but in spite of so many years, there are many people who never heard about Hare Krishna now. The generation has gone and changed. Uh, so they're praising him as an honorable visitor. So Prabhupada actually they treated them as ordinary conditioned soul and started preaching them over there. When Prabhupada sat and he took bath, everybody left. He's sitting there with garlands and sandal pulp and everything. Nityananda Prabhu comes and offers obviously he's by himself. He was feeling embarrassed and a little scared. Then Prabhupada picks up this picture. He said, he tells him, "Do you know I came here for what? To see your farm. To see your farm in Mississippi. He was more interested in. I've come especially to you. You can read."
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Before sunrise the next morning, Srila Prabhupada left in the rain on a 2-hour drive to the farm. He would have to return to New Orleans at night as he was scheduled to fly to Detroit the next morning. The rain had stopped in Carrier, Mississippi, and Srila Prabhupada looked out across the gently rolling land. The ISKCON farm, cleared land surrounded by a pine forest, was situated on a ridge. The previous owner had used the property as a horse ranch, and the modern 14-room brick house, the large barn, and several sheds were all in good condition. Prabhupada liked the land. He said it looked just like Bengal. Most of the devotees from New Orleans had raced to the farm to be with Prabhupada, and they crowded into the temple room, waiting for him to give the morning Bhagavatam class. As soon as he began to speak, however, many flies came, buzzing, landing on his head and body. A devotee began fanning him with a chamara whisk, but to no avail. "Come here," Prabhupada said. "This chamara is especially meant for driving away the flies. Even it is touching the body, there is no harm." Toward the end of the lecture, Srila Prabhupada began speaking of the farm. "Now this place, I see, although I have not seen all, it is a nice place. The grahastas may come here, have some small cottage, grow your own food, grains, and vegetables, and have your own cow's milk. Get nice food stuff and save time. Why should you go into the city hundreds of miles in a car and again hundreds of miles back to take unnecessary trouble? Stick to this spot and grow your own food, make your own cloth, and live peacefully. Save time and chant Hare Krishna. This is actual life. What is this nonsense life? Big cities and all these people busy. To see a friend, he has to go 30 miles. If he has to see a physician, he has to go 50 miles. If he has to go to work, another 100 miles. So what is this life? This is not a life. Be satisfied. A devotee's life should be prayojana. We require material necessities as much as is required. No artificial life." Srila Prabhupada went on to deprecate the life of simply machine. I might have thrown an extra machine in. He asked the devotees to show by practical example how to live simply and advance in Krishna consciousness. If they could show the example, people would try to follow. Although Nityananda and the others had been living on the land for many months, Prabhupada's words gave them real direction and purpose for the project. It was as if he were now breathing life into his project. Srila Prabhupada went to his room and sat with Brahmananda Swami, Sattvarupa Dasa Goswami, Harikesha, Jagadisha, and Upendra. When he began speaking about Varnashrama, he called for Nityananda. They should try not to use machines, he said. The men and animals should do the work. Nityananda asked whether the householders should produce food cooperatively or as individual families. They should work together, said Prabhupada, or what's the use of living in a community center? When Upendra asked how the milk should be used, Srila Prabhupada explained what he called the Indian village system. As Nanda Maharaj was keeping cows, he said, similarly, there are many villages. They have a big pan, and whatever milk is collected, they put into that pan. It is kept on a fire and is warm, so the whole family can drink milk whenever they like. Then whatever milk remains at night, they have to convert it into yogurt. The next day, they use milk and yogurt also as they like. Then after converting the milk into yogurt, whatever remains is stored. If there is sufficient old yogurt, they churn and then butter comes out. They take that butter, and the water separated from the butter is called whey. So instead of dal, they use this whey for eating with chapatis. It will be very healthy and tasty. Meanwhile, the butter they turn into ghee. There's not a single drop of waste. So Prabhupada's, he gets up and he makes the drive out to the farm, but he can't be there very long because he has to pretty much go out there and then immediately turn back around to go to fly to Detroit. So yeah, there you go. And so the farm, it was a big area of cleared land surrounded by a forest, and it used to be a horse farm and had it sounds like a very nice big 14-room building, like house on it, a barn and sheds. And Prabhupada said it reminded him of Bengal. Yeah. So, and since Prabhupada was in town, all the devotees jumped in the cars and head out to the farm as well from New Orleans to spend time with him and to be there for the morning Bhagavatam class at the temple room. And as soon as everybody gets there and Prabhupada's about to start his lecture, just a ton of flies, a bunch of flies come in. And, so somebody picks up, is that like a cowtail whisk, a chamara? Kamara? Come on, he said.
No, it's yak tail. Yak.
What? Yak tail? Okay. Yeah. So one of the devotees starts trying to fan him away. And he says, he tells him it is meant for it, right? Or is that a typo?
What he says that come closer, because the flies are not doing it. He said that, okay, if you come closer, the charmer will touch my body. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I wasn't sure. Okay. Yeah. I couldn't follow what he was getting at there. So yeah. So the guy's sitting there fanning him and it's not working. So Prabhupada says, what are you doing all the way over there? Come over here and get him off of me. So it starts, he says, if it hits me, it's fine. So at the end of Prabhupada's Bhagavatam class, he starts talking about kind of his vision for the farm. And he says, like, I haven't seen the whole place, but I like it. And, let householders come here and have, they can have their own small cottage and grow food and vegetables. And, we can have cows for milk. You save so much time if we just do everything here, make it a self-sufficient community. Why drive all the way to town for this or drive all the way here for that? You just waste time and unnecessary trouble. So he says, stay here, make your own food, make your own cloth, and chant Hare Krishna. He's like, that's life. That is actual life. He says everything else is nonsense life. You go to these cities and everybody's busy and, you have to drive everywhere. You need to see a doctor. You got to go this far. You need to see a friend. You have to go that far. And it's like, that's not real life. He said, I don't know what the word there, prayojana.
Prayojana means devotee's life should be prayojana means kind of utilization properly, not hankering in one sense, right?
Okay.
Unnecessary proper utilization.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. So he says, just so then he keeps going on about how like that city life is just nothing but machines. And he's saying, the people, the devotees should lead by example. They should try to live simply and others will follow. And Nityananda and the other guys and a couple others have been already living there, but I guess it doesn't sound like maybe they weren't making much progress or they were kind of directionless, but Prabhupada telling them what they should do. They said they breathed new life into the project. So he's sitting there and Prabhupada's sitting there with a couple of the disciples. And he says, you guys shouldn't use machines, right? Let the men and the animals should do the work. And the guys are just asking various questions of him saying, how should each family make their own food, grow their own food, or should we do it, as a co-op, or everybody, everything goes into the pot and, you grab what you need. Prabhupada says, yeah, everybody should work together. Why be a community if you're not going to share, right? If everybody's not going to work for the best of the community. And then they're trying to figure out, well, what should we do with the milk? And this is, from an American background, this concept is foreign, right? What Prabhupada lays out, or at least foreign to me. He said, what you do is everybody, you milk the cows, you come in, you put it in this big pan on top of the fire, and all day long the milk stays warm. And so if you want some milk, you come in, you get some milk, and at the end of the day, whatever's left, I guess you make it into yogurt. And so you do the same thing the next day, and you just keep going. And when you finally have enough milk or enough yogurt, old yogurt, you churn it, and then you get butter, and then you take that butter and you get whey, and then instead, you eat the whey with chapatis, and you turn the butter into ghee. Like it's just like such a for especially you have to assume most of the devotees were probably from suburbs or from the cities, so conceptually all of this is so much different than anything they would think of. And again, even for the majority of Americans, that fresh milk and just kind of that communal living and just all of that is a foreign concept. So yeah, but I like he's like, you just we do this, you do this, you do this, and then everything's good. We don't waste anything. So yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting.
That way you get fresh milk every day,
Yeah.
then fresh yogurt every day, then fresh ghee every day. So how the cycle goes. Everything get fresh, and then fresh buttermilk every day. So it's all majority of the things requirements comes from the cow's milk. Then some grains and some vegetables like that. That's it. And you don't waste anything. There's no single drop of waste. Okay, Nipa.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada said that everyone could take as much milk as necessary and that the ghee could be used in ISKCON restaurants in the city. Curd could also be used in the restaurants for making sandesha, rasgulla and other dishes. Srila Prabhupada stressed that the farm will be well organized, engaging all classes of men, brahmanas, kshatriyas, vaishyas and shudras. No laziness or unemployment. Otherwise, he said, people will criticize that we are simply eating and sleeping and escaping. Nityananda asked whether they should immediately stop using farm machinery. We are not against the machine, Prabhupada explained. We can utilize machine, but we should not allow others to be unemployed while we use the machine. This is the point. You can use the machine, but the first thing is that everyone should be employed. If you have got many men, then why should you engage the machine? Srila Prabhupada also explained that in Vedic culture, the Kshatriyas collected taxes and protected the citizens while the Shudras worked in the fields or at trade. The women would cook, spin, weave, and take care of the milk products. The low class men, such as cobblers who used the skin of dead cows, were allowed to eat meat. But not that one is Professor such and such, and yet he is eating meat, Prabhupada said. This is the way of the degraded modern society. Teacher means Brahmana, and yet he is eating meat. How horrible. So do these things and organize. I can give you the idea, but I will not live very long. If you can carry it out, you can change the whole world. Especially if you can change America, then the whole world will change. Srila Prabhupada became emotional, and tears came into his eyes. It is the duty, he said. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has explained Para upkara, save them. If it is not possible to save everyone, as many as possible. This is human life. This is Krishna consciousness to save those who are in the darkness. Don't think he said Krishna consciousness is my profession. I'm getting a living, food and shelter. That is just what the Indians are doing. Not like that. It is para upkara. That is Krishna consciousness. Then Krishna will be very much pleased. Krishna personally comes for giving this benefit to the people. And if you do, then how much Krishna will be pleased. Just like I am traveling to my centers, and if I see that my students, my men, are doing very nice, everything is going nice, how much pleased I will be. Then I can save my labors and now write books for the rest of my life. Similarly, if Krishna sees that you are on the behalf of Krishna trying to save these rascals, then you will very much please Krishna. The Vaishnava's qualification is para dukha dukhi. Dukhi. This is unhappy seeing others' distress. This is a Vaishnava. Srila Prabhupada ended the intimate meeting by rising and leaving the room. So Srila Prabhupada said that everyone should take as much milk as necessary and the ghee should be used in ISKCON restaurants around the city. In the city, and the curd should be used in the restaurants for making sweets such as sandesha, rasgulla, and other dishes. Srila Prabhupada said that the farm should be well organized and engaging classes of all men such as Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. And there should be no laziness or unemployment. Otherwise, people will criticize that we are simply eating and eating, sleeping, and escaping. And Nityananda asked at that point that should we immediately stop using the farm machinery. Prabhupada explained for this. He said, we are not against machines. We should utilize machines, but should not unemploy others while we use machine. That was his point. And you can use machine, but if everything is there, everyone should be employed first. If you have got many men, then why do you need machines? That's what Prabhupada explained. And Srila Prabhupada also explained that in Vedic culture, Kshatriyas used to collect the taxes and protect the citizens, and Shudras used to work in the field or trade, and women used to take care of like cooking, spinning, weaving, and other milk products. And low class men used to use the skin of the dead cows who are allowed to eat the meat. But if a professor eats meat, then it is like a degraded modern society. Teacher means Brahmana, and yet, if he's eating meat, then it is horrible. So these things should be organized. And then he said he can give you the idea, but he will not be here around for very long. And if they can carry it out, you can change the world. Especially if there is a change in America, then he will be able to see the world will change automatically. And Srila Prabhupada also became emotional, and tears came into his eyes, and he said it is his duty. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also explained about para upkara. It said save them. If it is not possible to save everyone, save as many as possible. This is what human life is, and this is Krishna consciousness, to save people who are in the darkness. And don't think, he said, consciousness is his profession. Like, he's getting his living, food, and shelter out of it. But that is what the Indians are doing. It should not be like that. It is para That is, Krishna should be very much pleased in the whole process. It should be like Krishna comes from for the benefit to the people. It should be like you're pleasing Krishna. Just like if he's traveling around the centers and he sees students and men doing a very good job, everything is going nice, then he himself will be pleased. And that's how he wants it. And he can save many labors and write books for the rest of his life. And similarly, like Krishna sees that you are working on behalf of Krishna, trying to save all the people who are not in the process of Krishna consciousness, then Krishna will be very pleased. And this is the prime qualification for being a Vaishnava. And that is para dukkha dukhi. That is, if you see others in distress, you should be unhappy. This is a Vaishnava. And Srila Prabhupada ended the meeting by rising and then leaving the room.
Pranatu.
Hare Krishna. When Harikesha mentioned that he was spending 2.5 hours to cook Srila Prabhupada's lunch, Prabhupada said, "You do not know how to cook. I will show you and do it in 1 hour." 1 hour? Said Harikesha, almost in disbelief. This is amazing. Prabhupada then took off his shirt and entered the little kitchen of the Mississippi farm. While a crowd of devotees peered in through the open door, Prabhupada looked at his wristwatch and announced, "It is now 12 o'clock." He used the same three-tiered brass cooker he had brought to America in 1965. In the bottom section, he put mung beans and water. In the middle section, he put rice. And in the top, he arranged various cut vegetables: squash, peas, potatoes, and cauliflower. Putting the cooker over a low flame, he then poured an inch of ghee into a frying pan and placed it over a flame. Next, he cut up an eggplant, dipped the pieces into turmeric and salt, and began to fry them in the hot ghee. He mixed a kneaded dough and began rolling out chapatis. Periodically, he checked his wristwatch, and when 45 minutes had passed, he took the cooker top off and turned it upside down to use as a small frying pan. He put in ghee and cooked some bitter melon, then deftly added cumin, anise, chili, and asafoetida. He squeezed lemon on the steamed vegetables and within a few minutes had finished. Srila Prabhupada looked at his watch. 1 hour, he said. We have cooked 9 preparations. He then left the kitchen while his servant prepared his plate. Prabhupada said that everyone who had watched him cook should be given some of the prasadam. About 5 in the afternoon, Prabhupada toured the farm. In the barn, he saw the calves taking milk. How are you using the bulls? He asked. Like a hesitant student, Nityananda replied, to plow. Yes, said Prabhupada, to plow and transport. You have to engage more men for plowing. 2 bulls may be used for each plow. Passing by a hay field, Prabhupada asked why the cut hay still lay in the field. Nityananda explained that he had to wait for it to dry after the rain. Prabhupada warned that rain could spoil the hay. It should be harvested soon. Coming upon a 3-acre plot of sugar cane, they walked up one row and entered deep into the cane patch, which stood several feet above their heads. Emerging on the other side, they came to the edge of a forest of pine. These jungles are natural arrangements, said Prabhupada. You cut the trees, make your home, and the balance of it you can make for fuel. Then the ground you can plow and grow your own food. That's all. It's natural. Prabhupada lamented modern society's waste of trees by printing heaps of useless newspapers. He saw the 2 acres of fruit trees the devotees had planted, satsumas, peaches, pears, and figs, as well as the 25 large pecan trees. so, Harikesha mentioned that, it took about 2.5 hours to cook Srila Prabhupada's lunch. And Prabhupada said he uh, responded saying he doesn't know how to cook and will show that to cook in 1 hour. And Harikesha, although in disbelief, uh, found that amazing that Prabhupada would be able to do that in 1 hour. Prabhupada took off his shirt, entered that kitchen, and the devotees were all, you know, uh, came in to that small kitchen. And Prabhupada looked at the watch, announced it's 12 o'clock. He used this 3-tiered brass cooker that he got from India and put some moong dal, rice, and vegetables. And, while that was happening, he, was also parallelly, put some ghee in a pan and spices and cut up and fried eggplant. And then he mixed and kneaded the dough and began rolling out the chapatis. And then, right 45 minutes passed, took off the top, which is called what, a whistle, and turned it upside down. And then he put in some ghee and cooked some bitter melon, added all the spices to it, and squeezed some lemon in the vegetables, and he was finished. And spot on in 1 hour, he finished the cooking and made 9 preparations. And then he left the kitchen and said that everybody who watched him cook should be given some of the prasadam. And then Prabhupada later in the afternoon went to the farm. Uh, he saw how you know the milk, the cows or the bulls there, and asked how they were utilizing the bulls. And Nityananda was a little bit hesitant but said to plow, and Prabhupada acknowledged to plow and transport and engage more people for plowing, and said that 2 bulls should be used for each plow. And then they passed by the hay field. Prabhupada found a lay of hay there, hay laying on the field, and said, that rain can spoil the hay and it should be harvested soon. Then they, reached the 3-acre plot of sugar cane, and it entered deep into that cane patch, which was so tall, several feet above their heads. And they came to the edge of a forest of pine. And Prabhupada said, that these jungles are how it should be, natural arrangement. But the modern society, so that you cut the trees and make your home, and the balance can be used for fuel. Then the ground can be plowed, and we grow our own food. That's all natural, and that how modern society was wasting so many trees, cutting so many trees, you know, by printing so much useless newspapers. And he also saw the 2 acres of fruit trees that devotees had planted with different fruits, and 25 large pecan trees among other fruits. Uh,
Nice.
yes.
Wonderful. Prasanti? It appears like everyone can be employed, no one can be jobless, right? But no one wants to do those. That's the unfortunate thing. Yeah, Prasanti, go ahead.
It's a
But he
half
discovered,
one leg here, one leg there situation.
Yeah. Mm.
discrepancies. Nityananda had lined up for Prabhupada's inspection two tractors, a large forage harvester, a hay conditioner, mowers, rakes, a blower, and a wagon. When Prabhupada saw the machines standing in the open, he asked why they were not being kept under cover. Nityananda replied that they were still building a shed. In the meantime, it will be finished, said Prabhupada. By the time you finish your shed, they will be rusty and gradually become useless. He quoted a Hindi proverb and translated: a woman was dressing to go to a fair, but when she was finally dressed, the fair was already finished. The devotees laughed, but Nityananda was grave. Prabhupada continued: utilize these machines, otherwise, while they are in the working order, sell them. Don't keep them idle in this neglected way. Nityananda showed Prabhupada where 25 acres of sorghum was growing. This grain was for the animals when harvested would go into the silos. So everything is for animals, asked Prabhupada, nothing for man. The cows give us milk, explained Nityananda. That's all, asked Prabhupada. And you are not growing any food grains. Why? Prabhupada's instruction was clear. Just before the walk was over, he again asked Nityananda what the oxen will do, plow the fields. Nityananda replied like a student having learned his lesson. Yes, said Prabhupada, that is wanted, transport and plowing the fields. And unless our men are trained up in Krishna consciousness, they will think, what is the use of taking care of the cow? Better go to the city, earn money, and eat them. This statement was similar to the instruction Prabhupada had given in various temples after installing the deities of Radha and Krishna. If the devotees were not enthusiastic, he had warned the deity worship would also deteriorate into mere ritual until finally the devotees would resent the spiritual masters giving them such a burden. And likewise, on the farms, if the devotees did not utilize the bulls in the natural way, and if they did not use the milk properly, then eventually they would want to get rid of the animals. But conducting things as Prabhupada had taught, however, the devotees, the cows, and the bulls would live cooperatively and happily, and Krishna would be pleased. Although for years Srila Prabhupada had given many practical instructions in their areas of the Krishna conscious movement, this was one of the first times he had given so many practical directions on conducting Varnashrama society. He felt satisfied and pleased to have seen such a promising Krishna conscious form community and re entering the house. Said he was ready to return to New Orleans. It had been a busy, productive day in the service of Krishna, and tomorrow would be another. Prabhupada found that some of the machines were not being used. Nityananda showed Prabhupada harvester, hay conditioner, mowers, rags, and a blower, wagon, and all the machines are in the open and they are not covered. And Prabhupada warned that they soon become rusty and they will be useless. So they need a shed quickly. And Nityananda was taking those instructions, and then he also said that utilize the machines. Otherwise, if you keep them idle and in this neglected way, they will soon be useless. So either sell the machines when they are working, or take care of them. And Nityananda also showed 25 acres of sorghum for animals. Once they are harvested, they go into the silos. And he asked, "What about for nothing for man? You are not growing any food grains." So his instructions are clear that they have to be independent and they have to grow for themselves and also for the animals, and they have to use oxen for plowing the fields, and and also for transportation. So that everything will be put to use, and they will not and they have to and they can also take milk from the cows, and they can drink and they can use it for the service of Krishna. So everything has to be used, and otherwise later they feel like it is such a burden. And devotees also should be enthusiastic in their work. Otherwise, afterwards, it feels like a ritual, and then soon it becomes a burden that the spiritual master has put on them. So they have to do the work enthusiastically. And Srila Prabhupada has given these instructions many times at many places, but here he has given instructions about the Varnashrama society and practical directions on how to do the things. And he is satisfied and pleased to have such a Krishna conscious community over there. Um, yeah, I think that's all, Prabhuji. And he was ready to return to New Orleans.
Nice.
Mr. Vijayanand Prabhu.
Detroit, August 2, 1975. Alfred Ford, the great grandson of Henry Ford, had become attracted to Krishna consciousness through the meeting of some of Srila Prabhupada's disciples in Detroit and through reading Bhagavad Gita as it is. He had adopted the principles of Krishna consciousness, began regularly chanting 16 rounds, and was now Srila Prabhupada's initiated disciple. Ambarisa. Today, Ambarisa was at the airport behind the wheel of a white Lincoln Continental limousine, waiting to meet Srila Prabhupada. On seeing Srila Prabhupada approach, Ambarisha got out of the driver's seat and offered obeisances. He opened the back door of the limousine for Srila Prabhupada, shut it, and returned to his seat, just like a menial chauffeur. We also have a car, said Prabhupada as they drove away. But we are going to the temple and distributing books with it. Anything can be used for Krishna. Here is a rich man's son, Alfred Ford. We are giving him an initial spiritual teaching and he is happy. Another of Srila Prabhupada's Detroit disciples was Elizabeth Ruther, now Lekashravanti Devi Dasi, the daughter of labor leader Walter Reuther. Ambarisa told Prabhupada that the Ford and the Reuthers had been enemies, but now two of their descendants were peacefully working together in Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada was pleased with the humility of these two disciples, and while he gave them some special status, he did not dote on the fact that they were from such famous families. Ambarisa and Lekashravanti saw themselves as humble servants of the Vaishnavas. On the way to the temple, Prabhupada's car passed a large modern building displaying flags of many nations and a large sign, Old Headquarters Ford. One of the devotees turned to Ambarisa and asked, "Is this where you work?" From the back seat, Prabhupada spoke up, "No, he is a proprietor." As they passed by the big urban redevelopment project, Prabhupada asked, "What is this?" "This is known as Detroit's Renaissance Center," said Ambarisa. "They will never have a renaissance," Prabhupada replied. The Detroit temple was located in an old brick house with a temple room in the third floor attic. The lease was soon due to run out, and Govardhana, the temple president, was looking for a new place. He showed Prabhupada photos of likely buildings, one of them a mansion of late auto industry millionaire Lawrence Fisher. The place was probably too expensive, Govardhana said, and was located in a bad neighborhood. But Prabhupada was interested. In fact, whatever the devotee cited as bad about the mansion, Prabhupada would say was actually good, or at least could be easily rectified. As far as the high crime rate in the area, he said, you will have nothing to fear. Just chant Hare Krishna and distribute prasadam. Invite all the neighborhood people, thieves and rascals to take prasadam and chant, and you won't have any thefts. Devotees emphasized that Detroit was the crime capital of the US and that the poor slum area where the mansion was located was known for drug trafficking, robberies, and murders. But Srila Prabhupada repeated that they should not be afraid. I lived in the Bowery, he said, and he described how the bums used to urinate on his front door and lie across the doorway. But when he come to enter the building, they would get up and say, yes, sir, come on, sir. So Prabhupada here, it talks about this visit to Detroit, and he's received by Henry Ford. Sorry, not Henry Ford, Alfred Ford, the great grandson of Henry Ford. He had become attracted to Krishna consciousness through the meeting of Srila Prabhupada's disciples in Detroit, and also through reading Bhagavad Gita as it is. And he adopted the principle of Krishna consciousness, and he had begun chanting regularly 16 rounds and was Srila Prabhupada's initiated disciple Ambarisa. And today, like Ambaresh was at the airport, and he was at the behind the wheel of a white Lincoln Continental limousine, and he was waiting to meet Srila Prabhupada. And on seeing Srila Prabhupada coming towards him, then he got out of the driver's seat and offered obeisances. And he opened the back door of the limousine for Srila Prabhupada, and he returned to his seat just like an chauffeur. Prabhupada mentioned that devotees also have a car when they are driving, but he mentioned that everything was used for going to distributing books with it, and he mentioned that anything can be used for Krishna. And here, the rich man Alfred Ford was given little spiritual teaching, and he's happy. And another Srila Prabhupada's Detroit disciple was Elizabeth Ruther, and she was called as Lekashravanti Devi Dasi, the daughter of labor leader Walter Ruther. And Ambarisha told Prabhupada that the Ford and the Ruther had been the enemies, but now their descendants were peacefully working towards a Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada, on hearing it, he was very pleased with the humility of these two disciples, and he gave them the special status, but he did not mention the fact that they were from such famous families. And Ambarisa and Lekashravanti saw themselves as a humble servant of the Vaishnavas. And on the way to the temple, Prabhupada's car passed a large modern building displaying flags of many nations, and also mentioning world headquarters Ford. And one of the devotees looked to the Ambarisa and asked if Ambarisa worked over there. And from there, for that question, Prabhupada replied that he's the proprietor of this company. And they passed by a big urban redevelopment project, and Prabhupada inquired what was that, and Ambarisa responded that it was Detroit's Renaissance Center, and Prabhupada commented that there will not be any Renaissance over here. And the Detroit temple was located in an old brick house with the temple room in the third floor attic, and the lease was going to finish, and Govardhana, the temple president, was looking for a new place. So he showed Prabhupada some of the likely buildings where they can move the temple, and one of them was the mansion of the late auto industry millionaire. Also, that place was also too expensive, and also Govardhana mentioned that it was located in a bad neighborhood. But Prabhupada was interested in it. In fact, whatever the devotees giving the some bad comments on the mansion, Prabhupada said like it was actually good, or it can be rectified. Any problem over there can be rectified. And regarding the high crime rate in those areas, he mentioned that devotees should pay for nothing. They should just chant Hare Krishna and they should distribute prasadam. and he requested everyone to invite the neighborhood people, including thieves and rascals, to take prasadam and chant, ask them to chant, and they will not have any thefts. And also, devotees raised concern that Detroit was the crime capital of the U.S., and the poor slum area where the mansion was located was known for all the illegal activities like drug trafficking, robberies, and murders. But Prabhupada repeated that they should not be afraid, and he mentioned that he lived in a Bowery, and he described that the bums used to urinate on his front door and across the doorway. But when he used to come enter the building, they would get up and say they will allow them to go inside, like, as yes sir, come on sir.
Mrs. Fisherman mentions nice incident. Welcome. One thing you see, notice that, this is an unfortunate thing. People, oh, this is a bad neighborhood. You cannot have a temple. Well, if it's bad neighborhood, why then? What is the purpose of having temple? If you can do in the bad neighborhood, Prabhupada is confident that this can change people's heart. Dover, I was trying to work, and people say, "Oh, this is a bad neighborhood," and Prabhupada said, "No, it's not a problem. This is still the temple there. Get the place," Prabhupada said, "and chant Hare Krishna there 24 hours a day. If a thief comes, he will say, yes, first take prasadam and then take whatever you want. What do you have?" So Prabhupada went to see the mansion with Govardhan, Ambarish, and several GBC men. Listen very carefully, this interesting situation. They were met by the owner and a lady who introduced herself as a real estate agent. As the owner guided them on a tour, Prabhupada came to like the estate even more. The palatial building was situated on 4 acres surrounded by a high stone wall. There were gardens and walkways, now in despair, as well as fountains and swimming pool. Some of the devotees thought the place gauzy with its extravagant 1920s decor, but Srila Prabhupada saw the great potential. As soon as he entered the vestibule, I don't know what that means. As he entered the vestibule, how you pronounce that, vestibule, and saw the ornate Italian tiles and marble archways, he began to smile. The group entered the lobby, its high ceiling covered with classically sculptured leaves, rosettes, and hand-painted plastered flowers. Next they entered the ballroom, with its marble floor and high vaulted ceiling painted to resemble an early evening blue sky with clouds and stars. Special lighting gave the effect of natural starlight. At one end of the hall, 3 marble arches exactly resembled the design Prabhupada had given for the deity altar in his temples. 3 altars could be installed there, and the ballroom made into a small temple with very little renovation. Prabhupada did not comment to the owner on the ballroom's suitability, but to the devotees he was obvious. The tour then proceeded to the boat well, an indoor water garage capable of holding several yachts. The boat well opened into a channel, which opened into the nearby Detroit River. Prabhupada mentioned that the devotees could get a boat for their preaching. As Prabhupada and his entourage entered one gorgeous room after another, they saw the many carved stone columns, hand-painted floor and walled rails from Italy and Greece, and ceilings ornamented with gold-leafed figures. Rare antique crystal chandeliers adorned many of the rooms. There were living rooms, library rooms, and dining rooms, and billiard room, a music room, 2 master bedrooms, 2 other bedrooms, all extravaganza. Each room is worth the entire price, said Prabhupada privately to the devotees. So here is the situation. They get the fisherman's palace. Anyone been? I don't know if anyone been to that temple. So yeah, we got initiated there, right? We got initiated in this place actually, in fisherman's Radha Kunjavihari temple. So we have some connection here. um, so here, Prabhupada came to see her along with a few GBC and the temple president there, and they find the place. And he said that don't worry, just chant 24 hours. Don't worry about the steps. If they 24 hours, if they come, ask them to take prasadam and then take whatever you want. Can you find anyone like this? Give them prasadam and take them, do whatever you want. Automatically their mind will change, right? Isn't it? It has changed a lot of people's mind. So he went to the mansion with Govardhan Ambarish Prabhu and other people, an agent, a lady who introduced her, lady, a real estate agent. So it was guided tour on them. And now let's see what is there in this. They're asking for high price, but what other things are there? Nice stone walls and fountains, swimming pools, and extra decorations. Some people say, very old, something like that. So, but Prabhupada saw that all Italian tiles, if you make it, you're going to make lots of money. The lobby, the ceiling covered with classical sculpture leaves, rosettes, and hand-painted plaster flowers. The ballroom, marble floor. It is marble floor, ceiling, high voltage ceiling painted. He saw that this place can be made a small temple room in his idea, but he didn't tell the owner. If you tell the owner is, then it's, wow, these people need it. So what is going to happen? They will increase the price. They will not reduce the price. The Prabhupada didn't tell to the owner. He was telling the devotees he could see this. Then he proceeded to the boat well. First time I remember hearing there's a facility that it can go to the channel, a river. There's a channel that goes to opens up to the river. Prabhupada said, okay, devotees can have a boat. So whatever he was seeing, he was thinking, how can I utilize this for Krishna? Gorgeous room, one after another he saw, and after a chandelier adorned with many other rooms, the rooms, library rooms, dining rooms, billboard, you need the whole army to manage this. Each room is worth entire price, Prabhupada is saying, privately to the devotees. Ajay? Interesting thing you will read now. Go ahead.
The owner spoke of Mayan, Moorish, Spanish, Greek, and Italian influences and pointed out that 2 hand-carved spiral columns in the dining room were salvaged from an ancient European palace. Wherever Srila Prabhupada looked, he saw opulence. An indoor marble fountain, a wall of iridescent tiles, hand-painted cornices. Even the large bathrooms were extraordinary, with glamorous imported tiles and gold-plated accents. The introductory tour completed, Prabhupada, his followers, the owner, and the real estate agent sat together at an umbrella-covered patio, an umbrella-covered patio table by the swimming pool. Already, Srila Prabhupada had mentioned to his disciples that the owners should donate the building for ISKCON's missionary purposes, and he had told Brahmananda Swami to make the request. Since the owner had not mentioned the price, Prabhupada spoke up. So we are beggars, he began. He was serious, and yet he spoke with an air of humor. Ambarisha and Upendra hid their faces in embarrassment. We have no money, Prabhupada continued boldly. Therefore, we are asking you, please give us this building. The owner glanced incredulously at his real estate agent and then laughed nervously. It's out of the question, he said. I can't do that. The agent was also taken aback and upset. He can't do that, she whispered. I can't give it to you, explained the owner, because I have taken a loss in maintaining this property. So I have to make my money back. This property represents a major part of my income. Then said Prabhupada, how much do you want? Well, the man replied, I have to get at least 350,000. None of the devotees dared say anything. Prabhupada thought for a moment and said, We will give you 300,000 cash. I have to think about it, the man replied. The real estate agent got to her feet, saying that a transaction like this is usually not done straight to the owner. But Prabhupada ignored her and spoke with the owner about how lovely the mansion was. Prabhupada then got up and took a short walk in the garden with his men. Govardhan asked Prabhupada if he liked it, and Prabhupada said yes, who would not like such a building? Ambarisha doesn't like it, said Govardhan. Oh, Ambarisha said he thought the mansion was Maya. Yes, said Prabhupada, but Maya is also Krishna. We can use anything in Krishna's service. Leaving the garden path and returning to their cars, Prabhupada asked Ambarisha, so is this possible? Yes, Prabhupada, this is possible. As soon as they returned to the temple, Ambarisha and Lakshmavanti conferred. Her inheritance was limited, but she was able to give 125,000. Ambarisha had to come up with the balance. The next day, the owner came to see Srila Prabhupada. The man was accompanied by two women, and they appeared to be a little intoxicated. He had come to say that he accepted the offer. Prabhupada smiled and reaffirmed his intention to buy. Afterwards, Srila Prabhupada openly shared his blissfulness about the purchase. Just see, he said, I didn't have one penny, and yet I offered him 300,000 cash. And now Krishna has provided the money. As Prabhupada had told the estate owner, I am sannyasi, I have no money. And after collecting 300,000 from his disciples, he still had no money. Within a few days, he left for Toronto, taking nothing for himself. Everything was Krishna's to be used in Krishna's service. So yeah, as Prabhupada's touring this place, every room is a little nicer than the room before it. It sounds like there's, imported tiles. There's salvage columns from European castles and all of this stuff. And then they finally get outside and they're sitting with the real estate agent and the owner. And Prabhupada had said, he's like, hey, this guy should just donate this to us. But nobody had asked Brahmananda hadn't made that request yet. But the owner hadn't talked about price. So Prabhupada just flat out says, we're beggars, right? We have no money. You should just give us this building. Like the same thing he tried with the city, the mayor of that one city. Like, you should just give us this building. It's for the best. And the guy looks around like, is this guy joking? He's like, God, that's out of the question. I can't do that. And the real estate agent as well is like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. The guy says, I've taken this massive loss in this. I need at least 350,000, to sell this because it's a major part of my income. And nobody says anything. And then Prabhupada, looks up and he goes, well, I'll give you 300,000 cash. And the guy says, I have to think about it, And the real estate agent's like, oh, that's not normally how this works, this and that. And Prabhupada just was like, I don't care. Right? He's like, I'm going to keep talking to the owner. This is how I do business. And then he gets up and he goes for a walk. And as he's talking to some of the disciples, he's like, hey, did you like it? And he's like, well, yeah, of course I liked it. Who couldn't like it? And the Govardhan says, he's like, well, Ambarisha doesn't like it. And Ambarisha thought the mansion was Maya. And Prabhupada says, yeah, but Maya is also Krishna. And we can use anything, including Maya, in Krishna's service. So, Prabhupada asks, can we do this? Can we get the funds together? And, they get back to the temple and they're talking and they right out of the gate, they have 125,000 and they just need to come up with the additional 175,000. So the owner comes to see them the next day and he says, hey, I accept your offer. And Prabhupada says, perfect. We'll get you the money. And Prabhupada was pretty amped about it. He was pretty excited about the purchase. He says, I didn't have a single penny. I had nothing in my pocket and I offered him 300,000 and now I have $300,000. And then he says, but then he says, like, and even after collecting 300,000 from these guys, I still have no money because I gave it all to the guy for the building. So, after that, after a couple of days in Toronto, he gets back on a plane after a couple of days in Detroit, he gets on a plane for Toronto, leaving them with the money and to finish everything else. And he says everything was Krishna's to be used in Krishna's service.
That's amazing. Devotees had no place rental, and he could arrange just 300,000 in a very little time. And so Krishna is so. Nipa, maybe you can read.
Toronto, August 7, 1975. Despite a severe toothache and swollen jaw, Srila Prabhupada continued with lectures, interviews, and his usual activities. He could not chew and took only pureed fruit. When asked if he would see a dentist, he told the devotees not to worry. He was used to difficulties. The Toronto temple was a small, run-down building, and Prabhupada was interested in helping the devotees relocate. All the real estate brokers they had approached had told them about a fabulous church for sale downtown. The temple president Vishwakarma had looked at the building, but the owners were asking almost $500,000 with a large down payment. When Prabhupada went to see the church, he decided that somehow they must get it. If necessary, we could send a total BBT collections for 2 months as a loan to the Toronto temple. Prabhupada told them to offer $300,000 cash, but when Uttama Shloka went, the church directors rejected the offer, saying they had already rejected an offer for much more. Srila Prabhupada did not give up the idea of getting the church, however, and he mentioned it before a meeting of Indians. Near the end of program, when the host begged Prabhupada to return again to bless them, Prabhupada took the opportunity to request all present to please help the devotees raise money to purchase the church. Once they had actually purchased it, he said he would return to Toronto. Many of the gentlemen present promised to help. So in Toronto, August 7, 1975, in spite of having a toothache and a jaw swollen, Prabhupada still continued with his lectures and usual activities. And he was not able to chew, so he was dieting on pureed fruit. And many devotees asked him to go and see the dentist, but he said not to worry because he's used to having difficulties. And Toronto temple was like a small rundown building, and Prabhupada was interested in helping the devotees to relocate. Many real estate brokers had approached, and they mentioned about a church for sale in the downtown. And the temple president Vishwakarma had looked at the building, and the owners were asking for almost like a $500,000 with large downtown payment. Prabhupada also went to see the church, and somehow they must get it. That's what he expressed. If necessary, he can send BBT collections as a loan to the Toronto. Prabhupada offered $300,000 cash, but Uttama Shloka went and the church directors rejected the offer, saying that they had rejected an offer which was much greater than this. And Srila Prabhupada still did not give up the idea of getting the church, and he mentioned this before the meeting of Indians. He begged when the near the end of the program, when host begged Prabhupada to come and bless them. Prabhupada also requested all present to help the devotees to raise the money to purchase the church. And once they had purchased it, he would return to Toronto. That's what he said. And many of the gentlemen present promised to help Prabhupada.
Nice. Prasanthi, can you read a little quick?
Suddenly, Srila Prabhupada's North American tour was interrupted. A telegram from Tejas in New Delhi announced that if Prabhupada wanted an interview with Indira Gandhi, he would have to come at once. The telegram contained no details, and his secretary was unable to reach the Delhi temple by phone. But Prabhupada didn't need to hear anything more. When an auspicious opportunity arose, he said, a devotee should act at once. Harikesha planned the trip so they could stop in Montreal overnight. From Montreal, they would fly to Paris, where Prabhupada could rest before going on to Delhi. As word of Prabhupada's imminent departure spread, several devotees in Toronto tried to see Prabhupada for last instructions about their projects. Rameshwara also phoned from Los Angeles, pressing Harikesha to ask Prabhupada a list of last-minute editorial questions regarding the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The questions, however, concerning the Bhagavatam's explanation of the structure of the universe, Prabhupada rejected as unintelligent. He ordered the BBT to simply print the books as they were. Not only was the prospect of meeting with Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, prompting Prabhupada's return to India, but so were his uncompleted projects, especially Hare Krishna land in Bombay. Brahmananda Swami said he thought Prabhupada had been looking for such a chance to end his Western tour and get back into personally managing the projects in India. Prabhupada had just dictated a letter to Surabhi in Vrindavana expressing disappointment that things could not get done without him. Prabhupada got a telegram saying they are having an interview with Indira Gandhi, and he would have to come at once. But there were no other details, and Prabhupada considered it as a very good opportunity, and it's an auspicious opportunity, and a devotee should act at once. Harikesha planned the trip to go to India, stopping at Montreal and then to Paris, where he could rest, and then he can go to Delhi. So, as the Prabhupada's departure spread to the devotees, everybody were coming in for last instructions. From LA, the devotee called for instructions about a fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada said, just print them as they were. And devotees also thought that Prabhupada wanted to oversee the projects, uncompleted projects in India, especially the Hare Krishna land in Bombay. And Brahmananda Swami said that he wants to personally manage the projects in India. And Prabhupada also dictated a letter to Surabhi in Vrindavana saying, expressing his disappointment that the projects were not completed without him personally being there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Vijayanand, please wait a few minutes. Vijayanand.
Yes, Prabhu, sorry. You are all simply writing letters to me without my personal presence. There you cannot do anything, simply correspondence. Anyway, be careful, there is no underhanded dealings in this transaction of purchasing land. It is very much risky, so be careful. Please send me a regular report of the Bombay construction. I am very much anxious and I will be glad to receive your regular report. Devotees in Boston, New Vrindavan, and New York received the news of Prabhupada's sudden departure with shock. He would not be visiting their temples, and they felt the impact of the stark realization that Srila Prabhupada could leave them at any moment. He was not obliged to stay with them, and they should not take his presence for granted. They had his instructions, this was sufficient. Of course, important decisions still had to be made. In Boston, the devotees had expected Prabhupada to look at a new building with them, but based on his instruction, they should they could become responsible and carry out his will even in his absence. The devotees who had recently received Prabhupada in their temples realized how valuable had been those moments. The personal association they had should be relished, remembered, and acted upon. The book distributors already knew that their work was almost important to Prabhupada, and that was sufficient. The press workers in Los Angeles were not dependent on Prabhupada staying in America. They had their mission, 17 books in 2 months, and they are working day and night. So, like Prabhupada was not happy because the devotees were just writing letters and making some correspondence, and he felt that there is less progress in the work allocated to the other people, and he also requested the devotees to be careful not to do any underhand dealings in any purchasing of the land because it will be risky, and he asked him to be careful, and he asked them to send a regular report of the Bombay construction. And he also mentioned that he is very anxious and he's looking forward to get the regular report on the construction. And the devotees in the America, from the Boston, New Vrindavan, New York, when they received the news of Prabhupada's sudden departure, they were very shocked. And the reason is he will not be visiting the temples. And they also felt that the impact of the realization that Prabhupada could leave them at any moment. So he was not obligated to stay with them, but they felt that they should not take his presence for granted. And they have they got all his instruction that is sufficient. But still, they felt that some important decision has to be made. And in Boston, the devotees expected Prabhupada to look at the new building with them. But now, with this current situation and with the Prabhupada's instruction, they will become more responsible and carry out his will even in his absence. Also, and the devotees recently received Prabhupada in the temple. They realized how valuable those moments were, and they felt that those associations should be relished, remembered, and acted upon. And also, the book distributors know that their work was very important to Prabhupada, and that was sufficient. The press focus in Los Angeles, they were not dependent on Prabhupada staying in America, because they already had their mission of 17 books in 2 months, and they're working day and night.
Thank you so much. It was a very nice reading. How Prabhupada is 1975, right? It's almost end. I mean, in his physical activity here. So how vibrant he's making everything. And small little association people, devotees are getting so much of inspiration. Very grateful. Thank you so much. We'll continue tomorrow. Okay. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prasanthi, you're doing well?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes.
Sure?